The story begins with a man named Frank, the owner of a mannequin store. At first glance, Frank appears to be an ordinary man, but in reality, he is a ruthless serial killer with a deeply disturbed mind. He frequently experiences hallucinations and is haunted by painful memories from his past. One night, Frank is standing outside a bar when he notices a young woman waiting for a taxi to take her home. Unfortunately, she can't find a cab, so she decides to walk home alone in the dark. Frank follows her, memorizing the way to her house. Later, he sneaks inside and shuts off the lights. When he approaches her and whispers, "You're so beautiful," she panics and tries to scream, but before she can, Frank shoves a knife into her mouth, killing her in a gruesome manner. After murdering her, Frank scalps her, removing her hair along with the skin, and takes it home. He then attaches her hair to a female mannequin, which he keeps in his bed. Frank's disturbing behavior stems from his traumatic childhood. When he was young, his father passed away, leaving him alone with his neglectful mother. Instead of caring for him, she brought different men home, indulging in drugs and promiscuity, while ignoring Frank completely. She treated him cruelly, leaving him feeling unloved and abandoned. As a result, Frank developed deep-seated hatred and violence toward women, which later turned into a psychotic obsession. Now, he roams the streets at night, preying on lonely women. He doesn't just kill them, he scalps them and places their hair on his mannequins, trying to make them look as lifelike as possible. He has already killed 20 women in this horrific manner. For Frank, this act brings a twisted sense of satisfaction, as if he is restoring life to his mannequins. Later, Frank joins a dating site and starts chatting with a woman. The two quickly make plans for a date and meet for dinner at a restaurant. The woman finds Frank charming, but as they talk, Frank starts having disturbing hallucinations. He sees blood dripping from her head and feels like everyone in the restaurant is staring at him. Suddenly, a sharp migraine strikes him, something he has suffered from for years. He rushes to the restroom, takes some medication, and eventually calms down before returning to the woman. After dinner, she invites him over for drinks at her apartment. Frank agrees and follows her home. Once inside, she tries to seduce him, appearing and revealing clothes. But instead of responding, Frank becomes visibly nervous and asks her to stop. When she continues getting closer, he snaps, grabbing her by the throat and strangling her to death. Her screams fade as she struggles for breath, but Frank doesn't let go until she is lifeless. Like before, he scalps her and brings her hair back to his apartment, placing it on another mannequin. But in his delusional mind, he believes she is still alive. He introduces her mannequin to the others, as if welcoming her into his eerie, lifeless collection. Later, Frank looks at himself in the mirror and rage takes over. He smashes the glass, furious at himself. Deep down, he doesn't want to kill, but he has lost all control over his own monstrous impulses. The next morning, when Frank wakes up, he notices a young photographer named Anna taking pictures of the mannequins displayed outside his store. Curious, he invites her inside. Anna tells him that she specializes in photographing mannequins, which fascinates Frank. As they talk, he shows her around the store and explains that this is his family business. He adds, "After my mother passed away, I took over." Anna is impressed by his craftsmanship and passion, so she gives him her phone number, hoping they can collaborate in the future. After Anna leaves, Frank sits alone, lost in thoughts about her. He is instantly drawn to her, but soon his dark urges take over, and he sets out in his car to find his next victim. He carefully watches different women, observing their behavior, but none seem to fit what he's looking for. Due to his traumatic past, Frank harbors deep resentment toward women he perceives as characterless, a belief rooted in witnessing his mother's promiscuity as a child. Whenever he deems a woman immoral, he believes she deserves to die. That night, he spots a woman, a dancer. He starts following her, watching her every move. As she walks toward a deserted area, Frank closes in. The woman senses that she's being followed and grows uneasy. She turns around and firmly tells him to stop, but Frank doesn't listen. Terrified, she runs toward a parking lot, desperately trying to escape. But before she can get to safety, Frank catches up to her. Without hesitation, he stabs her repeatedly, his strikes brutal and merciless. The woman pleads for her life, but Frank feels no sympathy. He delivers the final blow, killing her in cold blood. Then, as always, He scalps her, taking her hair home to place on another mannequin. The next day, Anna visits Frank's store while he is busy fixing the mannequins. She starts taking pictures and tells him she needs a few mannequins for her upcoming exhibition. Without hesitation, Frank agrees to lend them to her. Later, the two go out together, and Frank's attention remains solely on Anna. Over time, they develop a close friendship, but Frank's feelings for her grow into something more. For the first time, he doesn't just desire a woman, he genuinely loves her. Wanting to suppress his violent urges, he starts taking medication, hoping to regain control over his twisted mind. However, Frank is unable to control himself and continues his killing spree. One night, while watching the news at home, he sees reports about the police investigating the string of murders happening in the city. Later, Frank goes to Anna's workplace and watches her from a distance while talking to her on the phone. The two make plans to watch a movie together the next day. The following night, they go to the theater. While watching the film, Frank begins to see reflections of his own murders playing out on screen, making him feel uneasy. After the movie, as they step outside, Anna receives a phone call from her boyfriend who asks her to meet him at a bar. Frank, surprised, asks, "Who was that?" Anna casually replies, "My boyfriend. He wants to meet me at the bar." Hearing this, Frank is deeply hurt. He had assumed Anna was single. She invites him to come along and meet her boyfriend, but Frank refuses. Anna hails a taxi and leaves, heading off to meet her boyfriend, leaving Frank behind with his growing resentment. The next day, Frank attends Anna's exhibition, where she has displayed some of his mannequins. The event is crowded with visitors admiring the pieces. Seeing Frank, Anna excitedly greets him and introduces him to her boyfriend. But the moment Frank lays eyes on him, jealousy and rage begin to boil inside him. A little later, Anna's boyfriend heads to the restroom, and Frank quietly follows. Inside, the boyfriend notices him and smirks, saying, "Oh, you're that mannequin guy. Anna's little artist friend, right?" He then mocks Frank before walking away, leaving him humiliated. Still seething, Frank exits the restroom only for Anna to introduce him to her boss. She proudly tells her boss that Frank had contributed a mannequin to the exhibition. However, once Anna steps away to greet other guests, her boss starts ridiculing Frank's work, insulting him openly. Frank glares at her, his mind warping the situation. He doesn't see Anna's boss anymore. Instead, in his twisted perception, she transforms into his mother, standing before him in another form. Of course, in reality, his mother had died long ago, but Frank's deteriorating mental state convinces him otherwise. Later that night, when Anna's boss leaves for home, Frank secretly follows her, memorizing her address. Once she is alone, relaxing in her bathtub, Frank sneaks into her home. The moment she notices him, she tries to scream, but before she can, Frank lunges at her, grabbing her by the throat and repeatedly forcing her head underwater. She struggles violently before losing consciousness. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself tied to her bed, panic flooding her eyes. Sobbing, she begs Frank to let her go. But Frank, consumed by delusion, whispers, "You're my mother. You came back in another form. You never loved me. You never cared for me. You ignored me my whole life." Overwhelmed with rage, he stabs her repeatedly, killing her in cold blood. As always, he scalps her, taking her hair to place on yet another mannequin. The next day, Frank calls Anna, asking for his mannequins back. But over the phone, Anna is in tears. "Last night, my boss was murdered in her home. The police are questioning me. I'm so scared," she cries. Hearing this, Frank calmly responds, "Don't worry, I'm coming to you right now." But when he arrives at Anna's house, he sees another man there. Anna tells him that the guy is her neighbor. Then, the guy says he has some urgent work and leaves. Once Frank and Anna are alone, Anna confesses that she recently broke up with her boyfriend. She feels that she should have stayed with her boss last night. But Frank tries to comfort her and says, "You shouldn't blame yourself for this murder. What's done is done." To console her, Frank starts massaging Anna's shoulders and, while looking at her hair, remarks, "Hair is the only part of the human body that never decomposes." Anna is still crying. Just then, Frank accidentally slips and says, "Your boss lived just a short distance from here, but when she was in trouble, why didn't she call you for help?" Hearing this, Anna is taken aback. She immediately asks Frank how he knows where her boss lived. Realizing that he has been caught, Frank confesses that he is the one behind the murders of Anna's boss and the other missing girls. It suddenly dawns on Anna that Frank is the real killer. In a panic, Anna quickly grabs a knife from the kitchen and orders Frank to leave the house. But Frank refuses and starts advancing toward her. Terrified, Anna stabs Frank's hand with the knife and locks herself in the bathroom, screaming for help from her neighbor. Frank bangs on the door and says, "Open the door, Anna, nothing will happen." Just then, Anna's neighbor hears the noise and asks her to open the main door. Frank swiftly picks up a large meat cleaver and hides. As soon as the neighbor enters the house, Frank suddenly emerges from behind and brutally kills him with the cleaver. Afterward, Frank knocks on the bathroom door again, pleading, "Open the door, Anna!" But Anna refuses. Enraged, Frank kicks the door open and barges in, grabbing Anna by the throat and strangling her until she loses consciousness. Frank then carries an unconscious Anna to his car, placing her in the back seat and driving off. Halfway through, Anna regains consciousness and notices a mannequin lying in the back seat. She pulls off one of its hands and, seizing the opportunity, stabs Frank multiple times in the stomach, injuring him badly. As Frank struggles, Anna escapes from the car and runs onto the road. Despite his injuries, Frank slowly chases after her. Desperate, Anna stops a passing car and begs for help. She jumps inside. The driver, seeing Frank covered in blood and stumbling toward them, panics and tries to run him over. However, in the process, he loses control of the car, resulting in a crash. The driver dies on the spot, while Anna is seriously injured. Meanwhile, a blood-soaked and gravely wounded Frank stumbles toward Anna. In his final moments, he confesses, "I love you, Anna. I just want to be with you forever." But Anna is barely alive on the brink of death. Before she takes her last breath, Frank scalps her, removing her hair. Anna dies shortly after. Frank then returns home and places Anna's hair on a mannequin dressed in a bridal outfit, keeping it beside him in bed. Suddenly, he begins hallucinating. He sees the ghosts of all the girls he murdered. They appear around him, laughing and mocking him. The hallucinations intensify as the women approach him, clawing at him with their fingers, tearing him apart. In reality, Frank ends up killing himself in his delusional state. Moments later, a SWAT team storms into Frank's house and finds his lifeless body. The truth is, Frank was always alone, living in a world consumed by blood, fear, and hallucinations. When he met Anna, he thought she could change him, make him abandon his murderous ways, but his fractured mind never allowed him to do so. In the end, his own madness led to his downfall. And with that, the movie ends. If you were in Anna's place, would you have figured out Frank's true nature sooner? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching the video till the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and share. For more movie explanations, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. Until then, bye-bye.